What's up, YouTube? Been a little while since I talked to you. Recently picked up a cheap car and just wanted to give you an update, being it is 3800 powered, and we have talked about 3800s before. I was going to do a little video on how cheap I got this and what I'm going to do to it. So, thanks for watching. Hobbies and Hot Rods. Now this is a 98 Firebird. I recently traded my Wave Runner for this. That'd be the same Wave Raider I got for working on that Nova in a previous video. And I'll show you a picture of that. And traded even up for this. So I don't have hardly anything in this, being I was given the Wave Runner. And I haven't used the Wave Runner in probably a year. And I only did use it one time. This guy traded me even up. He bought this thing almost brand new. It does have some fading clear coat on it, or the clear coat's coming off. It is a 98, so, and it has been driven. But this guy said he bought it in 2000 and had like 8,000 miles on it. So he's the second owner. He told me his wife drove it, then his son drove it in college, and then he gave it to his brother, and the title is still in his name, so he sold it to me, and, well, traded it to me, but said it would try and start, but it wouldn't try and start. Well, there was a bunch of wires, well, there was a few wires cut on it, not a bunch, but obvious wires, and it turns out that a squirrel was in here hiding nuts. I mean, I can show you the intake manifold, and the lower intake has all kinds of nut debris on it. And although I'm kind of interested in the way the intake manifold's made on this, because it's a pretty cool straight shot design. It's kind of interesting. So here's the lower intake, and you can see, you know, it's got the big bubble looking top on here, and the air comes in and then shoots down through these ports. Well, you can see all the debris here. I vacuumed the hell out of this thing before I pulled this, trying not to drop any debris in the engine. And got that all apart. And the thing was, when I got this, I tried to turn it over, and it wouldn't turn over. And I was like, well, I'll go ahead and do general maintenance on this, because he told me it had been sitting maybe 6 months, and I think it was sitting 6 months at his house. But I'm pretty sure it was sitting for like 3 years before it got there, because he basically told me his brother put a water pump on this because the runner was kind of hot, and it wouldn't start after that. And he did have the EGR valve wires. I guess for some reason he pulled off the EGR valve, and the throttle body wires he messed up, and you could see he had twisted those together. And same thing with the EGR valve. Said that he messed up the plug and pulled an EGR valve off a different engine. I don't know. I've got 2 more engines sitting right. The ones that I had for the Regal, one of these I got, supposedly it was built. I have all the parts in the basement to that one, and it had ratio rockers. And this one is out of a 2001 Camaro. And I was going to turbo this one originally and put it in my Regal. It'll take a lot of power. You don't need to do anything to the bottom. They have cross-bolted mains also. They have a lot of similarities to a Stage 2 Buick block, and that's why I like them, and they're super cheap. So I really just got this for a gas mileage getter, because since my Jetta got totaled, I wanted something that got a little more gas mileage, since we have this ridiculous gas price now. Just like my truck, these intake gaskets start to leak between the coolant passage and the intake port, and then it'll run across here and leak into your intake port. And the gaskets did look pretty horrible. And a lot of people are like, I'm sure that's what it is. Head gaskets just don't go bad on these. Well, you can't tell me head gaskets don't go bad on these ever, because on every head gasket goes bad eventually, right? So I'm already this far in, so I figured might as well go ahead and put head gaskets on it anyway. It's got 176,000. I wouldn't trust them to go forever. So it's only $30 for a head gasket. It is pretty tight in here. The worst thing about these 3800s is these stupid brackets they put on here. These lift brackets from the factory. You have to take this bracket off to get to the valve cover, and it's hard enough to get the one off the front, let alone the one off the back. You really have to reach back there, and to break that thing loose, it is hard to get a wrench in there. And way back there. And there is two brackets back there. There's this one too, and it has to come off. So get those off though. And yes, it would be easier to take this out from the bottom, but I don't have a lift. My ceiling is too low for a lift. So this is the way it's going to get done. And
Disco Dix.
After further inspection, I noticed that both of these cylinder heads were cracked on number 1 and 2 cylinder, which would be the front cylinder on both cylinder heads. One side is 1 and one side is 2. You can see here that cleaned up. It is very obvious there's a crack right there. So, yeah. Here you can see I got two heads. One is from a 120,000 mile 3800 and the other one's 176,000, the one I pulled off the car. You can see the crack right there between the valves. And the rest are okay. But I was going to show you a quick leak test on this. You have a parts washer, just flip her on, a little on the intake on each one, and you can see how bad these leak. And some of this might be rust, but you can just see it rolling out of there. And then an easy test to see how really bad it is you can just take your air nozzle and put it right here. You can see it come right out around the valve through that intake port. There you go. Certain places leak worse than others. You might have to go around the valve like so. That one not so much. That one has started to seal up after sitting here, believe it or not. And some of these might have been open when the car was sitting, and rust might be sitting in the valve face. So like these, they don't hardly leak at all. I mean, it's seeping, but it's been sitting here for like an hour. So, and you put air around this, and you gotta mess with it before it gets to come out. But see, I dried that off. It's taking this long for it to come out. I'm not even gonna lap these. They're gonna be fine, I think, when they get heated up and get run a little bit. It'll probably seal just fine. And the middle one does not leak at all. So I was starting to lap. I pulled one of the valves on these heads to lap one of the valves and noticed that there was a crack right there. And I was like, better check the other one. It's cracked too. So somebody got this pretty hot whenever the intake gaskets were leaking. It got low on water sometime. The block looks fine. We're going to go ahead and take these 120,000 mile cylinder heads. Still got one more to pull, and then we'll stick it right over in this guy. So we're going to use these roller rockers. They're Yellow Terra from another engine I had. It was a supercharged, I think would be an L67. The biggest thing with the supercharged heads is one of the things you need to know when you go supercharged on a 3800 is you have to change the heads too, because there's no space for the injectors in the intake. So the injectors are actually in the cylinder head, not in the intake manifold, because the supercharger comes right up to here. So one thing to keep in mind, if you want to go supercharger, it's a lot more work than just slapping on a supercharger. As you can see on the naturally aspirated, the injectors are in the lower intake right here. I've already got both the head gaskets on, and I just got the rockers on one side here, loosely in place. These are as big as you can go with the stock valve springs. They're 1.84 to 1 ratio. Stock on this is 1.6 to 1. I think I'm pretty... Well, now, I'm positive that the lift, I can double check this, but the lift on this stock is 412 thousandths, and after this it should be 475, I believe. And they recommend, I think Intense recommends that you get their 90-pound valve springs. If you do go to a 1.9, that's the biggest roller rocker you can go is a 1.9 to 1 ratio. And they say you should go with a bigger valve spring. But you don't have to do any head work to this. You can just bolt them on. It's like 25 pounds of torque, and that's it. They do come with reusable bolts too. They're just regular old hard 1/4-inch Allen bolts. The factory ones are stretch bolts. And for comparison, I have a whole rack here. Some gooeys and some cleans. Rockers, and the whole rocker assembly comes off with its plate like so, and these all have stretch bolts in them. You can see how it's pretty obvious on top. It's just a regular old GM bolt, and these are very, very similar to LS rockers. A lot of the stuff in the 3800 is similar to an LS. They do use the same valve springs. They do use the same lifters. Yeah, and I also spent the morning drilling out these two broken off studs. They're not perfectly centered, but they're really close. I had to drill this bolt out, both sides, and tap it. It's an M8125. And then also the EGR valve port. I had to drill this one out too. That one got kind of welded up, but there's still some threads in there. So this got drilled and tapped also. And the other exhaust manifold that's already on there, I did do a little port work too. Well, this is one of those things, just like, that bugs me too much. I have to fix that. So you can see this little edge right here. And we'll round this off, smooth it out some, because you can see how the air is just going to go and hit that and create a hot spot and turbulence. And real easy fix for no more than it takes 5 minutes. If that, and there's a spot right here. Now this one's wide open. Don't need it so much there. A lot of people say that the exhaust manifolds flow better on the newer ones. Like this is a 98, and you can see it's kind of shaped like a ram horn. Like the old 350 ones that are sought after. Like would have been on like a late 60s Corvette, early 60s Corvette. Probably Camaros. See if I can find the other exhaust manifold here. Yeah, and these are the ones on the 2000 later. Now, I mean, yeah, there is a lot more volume in there, but I don't know if it's better. Nobody has any dyno charts that I have found, one against the other. If I had a wheel dyno, it would be interesting to see. Richard Holdner. You ought to try that with these versus these. So the worst thing about these, you have to take all the heat shields off to get the stupid bolts out that hold them to the cylinder head. And I'm just going to leave this one on, and I might put the top one on the other. The rest of them, they're such a pain to get to. Plus these bolts rust, and the heads round off real easy. So I'm not even going to dick with putting all the shields back on. Another thing I wanted to mention is if you did want to use these, the Y pipe is longer to the exhaust manifold than it is on these, because these are longer from the head to the Y pipe. So you can't just pull one off and swap it. You'll have to either cut the Y pipe or use the Y pipe off a 2000 plus. So just keep that in mind. I also wanted to point out that the valve covers I've noticed on the Camaro and the Firebirds are aluminum. And on like the GTP engine I have, they are plastic. And people are like, what? They're plastic? No, this is an aluminum one. This is one that came off the car that I washed already. Here's a plastic one. Yeah,
That is plastic. Thanks for watching Hobbies and Hot Rods. We'll give you an update on this, and stay tuned.